Good afternoon and welcome to our Black History program here at Pennsylvania Avenue African Methodist Episcopal Zion Church in Baltimore, Maryland. We celebrate Black history during Black History Month, but we also celebrate it throughout the year because African history is American history. And therefore, we continue to celebrate every day. Black history celebrations cause us to look back, to embrace our heritage, and to be proud of the accomplishments of our ancestors. Black history causes us to be inspired, to know that we are strong people and that we can do anything that we set our minds to. Black history reminds us that we are a people of faith and we believe in an almighty God that makes everything possible for us. We will celebrate today with music, dance, and narration. And we will celebrate from the beginning when the Black family was first separated. According to Nicole Hannah-Jones of the New York Times, this separation started in 1619 when 20 or 30 Africans were brought across the Atlantic and sold to the British colonists so that they would have something to continue their journey. And so we celebrate them today because of the trip that they made across the Atlantic. You may want to take that trip today so that you can get a feel of what the beginning was like. We're going to invite you to go across the Atlantic to America for the first time with the first Africans. Following that, we will have a song, and then we will experience this pain and the sorrow of the Negro mother who reflects on that trip as she speaks to us today. We will then have some reflections from those who were born into slavery, who let us know what it was like when the Black family was attacked. And we want to say with great emphasis that the Black family is still being attacked today. Our job, as we will present to you, is to do our level best to empower the Black family and to keep the Black family together.
When it occurred, no one can say for certain. Perhaps it was the second week or the third, but surely by the fourth, when they had not seen their land or any other land for so many days they lost count. It was after this that fear turned into despair, and despair to resignation, and the resignation finally gave way to resolve. They knew that they would not hug their grandmothers again, or share a laugh at a cousin's wedding, or sing their babies softly to sleep with the lullabies that their mothers had sung to them. The teal eternity of the Atlantic Ocean had severed them so completely that it was as if nothing ever existed before, and that everything they knew had vanished. Some could not bear this realization. They heaved themselves over the walls of the ship to swim one last time with their ancestors. Others refused to eat, mouths clamped shut until their hearts gave way. But in the suffocating bowl of the ship called the White Lion, bound for where they did not know, those who refused to die understood that men and women chained to them and the dark were no longer strangers. They had been forced in trauma. They had been made black by those who believed themselves to be white. And where they were headed, black equals slave. So these were their people now. A pirate ship by the name of White Lion sailed into a bay, and they needed to trade something of value to get their supplies to finish the journey. So they traded 20 to 30 Africans to the British North American colonies that would go on to become the United States of America. This was the beginning of the African slave trade.
Children, I come back today to tell you the story of the long, dark way that I had to climb, that I had to know, in order that the race might live and grow. Look at my face, dark as the night, yet shining like the sun with love's true light. I am the child they stole from the land 300 years ago in Africa's land. I am the dark girl who crossed that Red Sea, carried in my body the seed of the free. I am the woman who worked in the field, bringing home the cotton and the corn to yield. I am the one who labored as a slave, beaten, mistreated for the work I gave. Children sold away from me, my husband too. No safety, no love, no respect was I due. 300 years in the deepest South. But God put a song in my heart and a prayer in my mouth. God put a dream like steel in my soul. Now through my children, I'm reaching the goal. Now through my children, young and free, I realized the blessing deed to me. I couldn't read then. I couldn't write. I had nothing back there in the night. Sometimes the valley was filled with tears, but I kept trudging through those lonely years. Sometimes the road was hot with that sun. I had to keep on, no stopping for me. I was the seed of the coming free. I nourished the dream that nothing could smother. Deep in my heart, the Negro mother. I had only hope, but now through you, dark one of today, my dreams must come true. All of you dark children in the world out there, remember my sweat, my pain, my despair. Remember my years heavy with sorrow, and make those years a torch for tomorrow. Make my past a road to the light. Out of the darkness, the ignorance, the night. Lift high my banner out of the dust. Stand like free men, support my trust. Believe in the right, let none push it back. Remember that whip, the slave trap. Still bar you the way and deny you life, but march forward, breaking down those bars. Look ever upward at the sun and the stars. Oh, my dark children, may my dreams and my prayers impel you forever up those great stairs. For I'll be with you till no white brother dare keeps my children of my Negro mother.
Go down, Moses, way down in Egypt's land. Tell, oh Pharaoh, let my people go. Go down, Moses, way down in Egypt's land. Tell, oh Pharaoh, let my people go. When Israel was in Egypt's land, let my people go. So hard they could not stand. Let my people go. It was a dark and dismal night. Let my people go. When Moses led the Israelites. Let my people go. Go down, Moses, way down in Egypt's land. Tell, oh Pharaoh, let my people go. Go down, Moses, way down in Egypt's land. Tell, oh Pharaoh, let my people go. Thus saith the Lord, oh Moses said, let my people go. If not, I'll smite your firstborn yet. Let my people go. No more shall they in bondage toil. Let my people go. Let them come now with Egypt's spoil. Let my people go. Go down, Moses, way down in Egypt's land. Tell, oh Pharaoh, let my people go. Go down, Moses, way down in Egypt's land. Tell, oh Pharaoh, let my people go. Go down, Moses, way down in Egypt's land. Tell, oh Pharaoh, let my people go. Go down, Moses, way down in Egypt's land. Tell, oh Pharaoh, let my people go. He's sure to deliver, 'cause he's strong and mighty. His hand is upon his people. He will keep his promise. Hold on, press on, believe in his promise. Walk in his plan for you. Go down, Moses, way down in Egypt's land. Tell, oh Pharaoh, let my people go. Go down, Moses, way down in Egypt's land. Tell, oh Pharaoh, let my people go.
I was born into slavery in 1820, 1821, 22. I don't rightly know. They didn't keep no records of slaves' births or deaths in those days. If you was a slave and black and poor, when you was dead, you was just dead. And when you was born, you was just born. Me and my mama and my daddy and my sisters, we all worked on the Brodas plantation. Master Brodas decided to send my daddy like 10 miles wayward. And that left us with a real sadness in the family because our daddy was gone. Then he did something even worse. He sold off my sisters down into the house of bondage, and they all had children. And they just snatched them out of their arms and sent them, my sisters, on down in Louisiana, down in New Orleans, where they didn't know nothing but whoop, and they didn't do nothing but destroy. It was hard living as a slave. And you know what? I didn't see my sister ever again until I saw one at the altar of the Mother Zion, A.M.E. Zion Church in New York, years and years later. But that's the way it was. The black family was always treated bad. They didn't care if they separated us. They would seem like they were scared that we was gonna get strong. But since then and now, black families matter. We deserve to be strong, and we deserve to be given a chance to have strong families. Yes, black families matter. That's why I worked so hard on that Underground Railroad. I would even take husbands and their wife, even if their wife was pregnant, and I know it was going to be a hard trip for her, but I know it was so important for the family to be together. So I was willing to take the chance to get them together and to keep them together so they could get to the north where they could be free. I even stood in the doorway down at the store on the Eastern Shore when this overseer was trying to stop this little boy from escaping. The boy was running out the store, and the overseer said to me, "Grab him, Hats, grab him." I could have grabbed him, and I could have held him too. Instead, I stepped across that door, and I said, "He's going to be free." So for all the slaveholders, back then and today, I say, black families matter.
Children, I talks to God, and He talks to me. I goes out and talks to God, in the field and in the woods. This morning, I was walking out, and I got over the fence, and I saw the wheat holding up his head. It was very big, and I goes up to it, and I takes hold of it. And can you believe there was no wheat there? I says to God, "What is the matter with this wheat?" He says, "Sojourner, there's a little weasel in it." Now, I's here talking about the Constitution and the rights of man, but there isn't any rights there. Then I says to God, "What ails this Constitution?" And He says to me, "Sojourner, there's a weasel in it. Hello, my name is Sojourner Truth, born Isabella, born free, on November 26, 1797. I'm an American abolitionist, women's rights advocate, a Union spy, and recruiter during the Civil War. I was born into slavery in Swankill, New York, but I escaped with my infant daughter to freedom in 1828. Because my family is so close to me, meant so much to me, when I gained my freedom in 1828, I went to court to recover my son. I became the first black woman to win a case like this against a white man. I gave myself the name Sojourner Truth in 1843. My sojourn for truth is what allowed me to do just that. I spoke at the Ohio Women's Rights Convention in Akron, Ohio. This became my best known speech and was widely known during the Civil War. It was, "Ain't I a woman?" In 2009, a memorial bust of me was unveiled in the U.S. Capitol Visitor Center. I am the first black African-American woman to have a statue in the Capitol building. And in 2014, I was included in the Smithsonian Magazine's list of 100 most significant Americans of all time.
My name is Jermaine Logan. I was born in 1813 in Davidson County, Tennessee, to a slave woman named Jane and her white master named David Logue. At birth, I was named John Logue. Jane later changed her name to Cherry, and later I changed my name to Jermaine. I added the middle name Wesley, and I added an N on to Logue to make my name Jermaine Wesley Logan. I successfully escaped slavery to Canada on my second attempt. With the help of my mother and by stealing my master's horse, I arrived safely in Canada. I learned how to read, and I worked many jobs there in Canada and New York. I studied at the Oneida Institute in Whitesboro, New York, and continued on to open schools for black children in Utica, Syracuse, and I also worked as a conductor on the Underground Railroad. I led families to freedom in Canada. Me and my family helped runaway slaves with meals, baths, and jobs. I became an elder in the A.M.E. Zion Church and later was elected bishop in 1869. In 1850, the United States Congress passed the Fugitive Slave Act, and it allowed for fugitive slaves to be captured and returned to their masters. In October of that year, I appeared before the city council and pretty much the entire city of Syracuse and made this speech, and I'll give you an excerpt or two from it, to appeal for them to become a sanctuary city.
Good day. I am Frederick Augustus Washington Bailey Douglass, born February 1818. Not quite sure of the day, but I decided to use February 14. Born in Tuckahoe, Maryland. I died February 20, 1895 in Washington, D.C. One of the most eminent human rights leaders, they have called me, of the 19th century. I was at the forefront of the abolition movement. After I was separated from my mom when I turned 8 years old, I was sent to Baltimore. Eventually, I worked on a Baltimore ship, and that led me to get away to New York City and then to New Bedford, Massachusetts. I eluded slave hunters by changing my last name to Douglass. In 1845, I wrote my autobiography, which has become known as The Life and Times of Frederick Douglass. And I also started my own anti-slavery newspaper, The North Star, published in Rochester, New York. People remember me for many things, but the A.M.E. Zion Church remembers me as a member of the African Methodist Episcopal Zion Church, the Freedom Church, and I was a freedom fighter who joined Harriet, Sojourner, and others in the fight against slavery, injustice, bias, inhumanity. But yet, I must remind you that the journey is not yet complete, and our mission is still very much alive.
Days may be darkest, but your light is greater. You light our way, God, you light our way. When evil is rising, you're rising higher, with power to save, with power to save. You keep hope alive. You keep hope alive. From the beginning to end, your word
should take
a train. You get to where you're going in a hurry. Hurry, 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 now it's coming. Can't you hear the rails are humming? If you should miss the A train, you miss the quickest way to get to Harlem.
I am Dr. W.E.B. Du Bois, humanist, sociologist, historian, civil rights activist, Pan-Africanist, author and writer and editor. Two pivotal dates in American history bookend my life that speak to America's unresolved struggle over race and rights, over freedom and oppression. First, I was born 5 years after Abraham Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation on January 1st, 1863. And second, I died in Accra, Ghana, on the eve of the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom, where the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King delivered his I Have a Dream speech on August 27, 1963. My life has been defined by the fight for freedom, equality, and justice, as is evident in the following two statements from The Souls of Black Folks, my most famous book. The power of the ballot we need in sheer self-defense, else what shall save us from a second slavery? And the other passage is, the training of the schools we need today more than ever. I will share you some of the things that you should know about my life that speak to the promise of America, where all men are created equal, a statement that was written by a slave owner. I was born in Great Barrington, Massachusetts, near the New York state line, and the only black person in my graduating class of 13. My summer neighbor when I was an adult was James Weldon Johnson, the author of Lift Every Voice and Sing, and his wife. I was the first black person to earn a doctorate from Harvard University in 1895. Over the arc of my 95 years, I was the author of over 1,700 publications in the age of the typewriter. My most famous insight was the problem of the color line is a problem of the 21st century. I was one of the founders of the NAACP in 1909, called the most famous 5 initials in America by the time we got to the 1930s. One of my most famous essays that is still relevant was a 1919 feminist essay called The Damnation of Women, which was a tribute to the dignity and worth of women, particularly black women. My wife and I lived in Baltimore in Morgan Park for over 10 years. Our daughter taught at Dunbar High School. I would often begin my morning speaking German to Carl J. Murphy, the editor of the Afro-American newspaper. The former Northern High School that is now closed was named in my honor. A brief history that ties this together. Even before the Civil War, black men were petitioning state legislators for the right to vote. In spite of the fact that black families continued to be separated and lived through Jim Crow laws, lynchings, and black codes, sharecropping, prohibition from reading, inequality at every turn, they still felt that the way out of slavery would be through education. During these bleak years, in the wake of the failure of Reconstruction, of inequality based solely on the color of their skin and the state-sanctioned laws of American apartheid, black people looked down the long segregated road to hope, stepped out on faith, and with some assistance from white people, they founded the HBCUs, which grew out of the historically black church. Thus our ancestors, with their muscular faith and stubborn hope, peered into the unseen and laid down the foundation for the formation of the black middle class that really came of age in the 1960s. Another milestone in our fight for freedom was led by Baltimore's very own Thurgood Marshall, who won the Brown versus Board of Education, a landmark 1954 Supreme Court case in which it ruled unanimously that racial segregation of children in public schools was unconstitutional. So there is no doubt about it. Education is the key, is the pathway from slavery to freedom, as is evident by the graduates that have come out of our HBCUs. And I will close on this note. Some of our notable HBCU grads, our former pastor and now bishop, Dennis Vernon Proctor, who's the presiding prelate of the Northeastern Episcopal District and is a proud alum of Livingstone College. Stacey Abrams, Spelman College. Yolanda Adam, referred to as the Queen of Gospel, is a graduate of Texas Southern. Kamala Harris, Vice President, proud alum of Howard University. Langston Hughes, Poet Laureate of the Black Experience from Lincoln University. John Lewis, Fisk University. Barbara Jordan, Texas Southern. Thurgood Marshall, Lincoln University. Ron McNair, North Carolina A&T. And Oprah Winfrey, proud alum of Tennessee State. So all of these people collectively and individually have been with us in the fight for freedom and justice. So we have a very proud history. And as James Weldon Johnson said, lift every voice and sing to earth and heaven ring.
Those brutal years of slavery were followed by more difficult and terrifying situations. There was the Reconstruction. There was sharecropping. There was Jim Crow. And then there was the Civil Rights Movement. In a time of Jim Crow, everything was separate and not equal. There were colored and white drinking fountains, colored and white schools, colored and white waiting rooms, colored and white places to sit on the bus, colored and white sitting in the balcony of movie theaters. There was no justice. Colored people having to step off the sidewalk when white people came to make room for them. And of course, the black family continued to be attacked. But during that time, Some social movements started, social justice movements. We see that with W.E.B. Du Bois, as we have the founding of the Niagara movement. And then on through, as our children needed to learn to read and to write and to go to school, and as they could not be a part of white institutions, we had black people founding institutions of higher education so our children could learn to read and write and take their place in society. In fact, education was looked upon as a way out of this terrible degradation and shame in which the black people were living. We will present to you now Dr. Du Bois, also a founder of a black college. These colleges became HBCUs today. And then we will present to you some families that benefited from these HBCUs, these black colleges and universities, who went on to make life better for themselves and their families, and to make this America a stronger America.
I am the first woman, the first Black American, and the first South Asian American to be elected Vice President of the United States of America. In the past, I was elected District Attorney of San Francisco, California, and elected as a United States Senator representing the state of California. As the first woman of color, and the first woman of South Asian descent, I am committed to social justice and equality. When I was a very young girl, my mother took me to civil rights marches in California because she was determined to see the change in the world of inequality, which instilled those same values in me. Not only did I have a strong mother, but I was nourished by a strong community and spent much of my time at the community center called the Rainbow Sign. When I became a student at Howard University, the sense of community and of Black people performing with excellence helped me to discover my sense of self and my focus on justice for all. My quest for justice drove me to keep American people safe from foreign threats. I also crafted bipartisan legislation to better secure American elections. As Senator, I also presented legislation to reform cash bail, combat hunger, provide rent relief, improve maternal health care, and address the climate crisis. I passed the bipartisan anti-lynching bill, and my legislation to preserve HBCUs was signed into law. I am Black history. I am Kamala Harris.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Reverend Lula Williams, Pastor Williams, and the entire Pennsylvania Avenue family for inviting me to share a few words about my family during this Black History Month celebration. My family, like many of your families, is rich in history and tradition, rich in things that we talk about often and things that, quite frankly, we never talk about. Reverend Williams asked me to share a little bit about my mother's side of the family, the side that founded the Afro-American newspapers. My great-grandfather, John Henry Murphy Sr., believed that a newspaper succeeds because it believes first in God, in itself and in the present generation. And that is something that he carried his entire life, and it was evidenced through the paper which he purchased in 1892 at an auction with a $200 investment from his wife, the former Martha Howard. John Henry Murphy Sr. was a formerly enslaved man, a sergeant in the Civil War, in the colored troops of the Civil War, and a whitewasher by trade. He and Martha had 10 children, 5 boys and 5 girls, and one of the boys was my grandfather, Carl Murphy, who, when his father died in 1922, he was the one that his father asked to take over the paper. But all of the brothers also worked in the paper, and the sisters, I don't think they worked, but I understand from my mother that the sisters received the same pay every week that their brothers did. We were taught at our family at a very young age that we were created to serve and not to be served. And so faith and family and community service and hard work were and still are the most important values of our family. Education also was very important to my great-grandparents, and most of their children went to college, and their children's children went to college as well. Great-grandfather John was active in the community, but so was great-grandmother Martha. She and her daughter Frances, in fact, were co-founders of the Colored Women's Y right here in Baltimore. And there is a building on Coppins campus named for my great-aunt Frances, who we called Aunt Frank. Under my grandfather Carl's leadership, the Afro grew, employed more than 200 people, had its own buildings and printing press. And Carl Murphy was a recipient of the NAACP Spingarn Medal in 1955 because of his work with Thurgood Marshall on the Brown versus Board of Education decision. Carl Murphy was a German professor, and he met his wife, Vashti Turley, on the campus of Howard University. She was 5 years his senior. He was her professor of German, and he wrote that they didn't hook up, if you will, until after she was graduated from college. Well, I found their love letters and put them in a book called No Ordinary Hookup, The Courtship of Carl and Vashti Turley Murphy, which is fascinating to read just because of the things that they talked about back in the early 1900s. But that's another story for another time. I just want to say in closing that I encourage each of you to write down your family history. Sometimes what we don't think is important is fascinating to people years later, and hold on to those pictures. It's so hard to do now because they're on our cell phones, and we're no longer, at least I'm no longer, putting them into scrapbooks, but I encourage you to hold on to those pictures. Now, earlier I said that Grandfather Carl was a prolific writer of prayers, so as I close, let me close by sharing one of his original prayers. Let me go on and pull it up and share it. He wrote prayers for every occasion. He had prayers that I found on backs of envelopes and on napkins, and must be just hundreds and hundreds of prayers. And yes, one day they too are going in a book. Shall we pray? We thank thee, Lord, for this glorious day and for the privilege of being alive and for the health and strength to enjoy it. Thank you for the gifts thou sendest. May we let our light so shine that it will illuminate that which is good and beautiful and magnify our Father which is in heaven. May we stand strong and firm against despair, falsehood, rudeness, hatred, pessimism, and prejudice. Help us to represent thee in thy world and truly reflect thy light to all men when the sun shines and the shadow falls. Amen. God bless you. Again, thank you for this opportunity to share about my family.
Education. Was that too fast?
You good.
Education. Passports to the future. The A.M.E. Zion Church called to develop the heart, the mind, and the soul. First scripture I was taught to memorize, 2 Timothy 2:15. Study, Paul and colleagues and friends and children, to show thyself approved unto God, a workman that needed not be ashamed, but found rightly dividing the word of truth. It's about excellence. Excellence of the mind, the heart, the spirit, and the press to develop, to lead, to build, and to conquer. When you talk about education, the A.M.E. Zion Church on all of its 5 continents has been about teaching and developing the mind. When I look at where we are with our schools, junior colleges, some that began with high school programs, Clinton Junior College, now Clinton College, Rock Hill, South Carolina, now with accredited academic programs through the bachelor's level. Lomax Hannon Junior College, University, A.M.E. Zion University, Hood Speaks Theological Seminary, Liberia, Nigeria, and then we come back to Zion's chief institution, Livingstone College, 1879, from Concord at Zion Wesley Institute to Salisbury, North Carolina, with a graduate school that grew out of it, Hood Theological Seminary, with master's and doctor's programs. But Livingstone, when I talk about Livingstone, I can tell the story. Dr. Joseph Charles Price, with a heart and a mind that we would develop not only preachers, but teachers. That's right, the heart to educate. Again, the mind and the soul, the clarity for vision and focus to understand and to make a better day for our people. When I think about the story of Dr. Price, and we're celebrating Founders Day week, it was all about being our best, training and developing. And I'm standing here today as I look at this map and this picture of the Board of Bishops. Before I could get my mind together, I had lost count at 17 that I know were developed by Livingstone College. Challenge from men who knew not to now men who at times know most, if not all, for the good of the work of kingdom building. Dr. Joseph Charles Price, when I look at his story from Elizabeth City to New Bern and then to what became Zion Wesley Institute, now Livingstone College, and when I hear the heart and soul and the mind of what he developed, and I look at what is there, Livingstone College, academic programs, bachelor's programs at every discipline and area of need today, but especially the heart for education. I look at who they are and the cry to always be one step ahead. It was Livingstone College, one of 27 institutions, that heard the cry of Dr. Frederick Patterson in 1944, who said, if we're all trying to raise money to survive and build, let's not band together. And the birth of the United Negro College Fund, Livingstone being one of those 27 charter schools then, and now one of their crown jewel institutions. And yes, you talk about history, Livingstone College, I don't care what big schools you go to, there would be no black intercollegiate football had it not been for Livingstone College and Biddle University, now Johnson C. Smith University, who played the first black intercollegiate football game in America. And even with that, it wasn't a challenge to play ball on the field or on the court. But even today, this day, Livingstone College is being honored as the basketball team in the CIAA tournament, virtual, though it was supposed to be in Bowie, Maryland, as the basketball team with the highest academic average. It's always been about the press to excellence without excuse. And from my freshman experience in orientation, those freshman teachers, Maddie Temple, Tatum, Lakin, and English, all the way through those who graduated with me, and I look at the leaders that they developed, and the press to be better than your best. Good, better, best, never let it rest until your good is better and your better becomes best. Stop making excuses, young man. Go to bed after you've got that lesson and wake up and refresh yourself before you come to my class. Make sure you can regurgitate what I taught you and what you've learned to prove you've mastered the lesson. They said learn the meaning of the lesson and don't lessen the meaning of the assignment. Livingstone College, Dr. Joseph Charles Price, just as the scripture would record it, he said, no matter how dark the night, I believe in the coming of the morning. It made a difference for me. I would not be the man, the servant leader that I am, and yet becoming, because I haven't gotten to my zenith point yet. I strive still for that which they put in me, a spirit of excellence for academic social excellence. Livingstone College, servant leader extraordinaire, striving to be the heart and the hallmark of education, that which the Freedom Church planted, nurtured, and built. To God be the glory for the difference it has, is, and shall forever make. Thank you.
I am Mary Jane McLeod Bethune. I was born July 10th, 1875 in Maysville, South Carolina, to former slaves Samuel and Patsy McLeod. I dreamed of a day when I could have things that white families took for granted, like books and glass windows. My mother said, Mary Jane has a rising soul. She will either go far or break her heart. My life changed when a local missionary woman offered to pay for my education, first in Scotia Seminary in Concord, North Carolina, and then to Evangelist D.L. Moody's Bible Institute in Chicago. I was the first African-American student to attend Moody Bible Institute graduating in 1895. Education was the first step in my remarkable journey. The dream of opening my own school took me to Daytona, Florida, where I started the school that would become Bethune-Cookman University. As I worked to build the school, I also became a national leader on issues related to civil rights, education, healthcare, women, and young people. I served as president of the prestigious National Association of Colored Women's Clubs and founded the National Council of Negro Women. I was appointed to numerous national commissions and eventually became an advisor on minority affairs in President Franklin D. Roosevelt's administration, organizing 2 national conferences on the problems of Black Americans. While I gave counsel to presidents and made connections with America's elite, my heart and focus was on the average men and women and the college students that I mothered and mentored. My access to people of power and privilege was never something I used to benefit myself. It was always an opportunity to gain access for those shut out of opportunities in our society. On October 3rd, 1904, I opened the Daytona Literary Industrial Training School for Negro girls with $1.50, faith in God, and 5 little girls. As I reflect on excerpts from my last will and testament, I sit communing in my study. I feel that death is not far off. I am aware that it will overtake me before the greatest of my dreams is realized, which is full equality for the Negro. Yet, I face that reality without fear or regrets. Since my retirement from an active role in educational work and from the affairs of the National Council of Negro Women, I have been living quietly and working at my desk at my home in Florida. The years have directed a change of pace for me. I am now 78 years old, and my activities are no longer so strenuous as they once were. I feel that I must conserve my strength to finish the work at hand. I leave you love. Love builds. It is positive and helpful. It is more beneficial than hate. Injuries quickly forgotten quickly pass away. Personally and racially, our enemies must be forgiven. Love thy neighbor is a precept which could transform the world if it were universally practiced. I leave you hope. The Negro growth will be great in the years to come. Yesterday, our ancestors endured the degradation of slavery, yet they retained their dignity. I leave you the challenge of developing confidence in one another. As long as Negroes are hemmed into racial blocks by prejudice and pressure, it will be necessary for them to band together for economic betterment. I leave you a thirst for education. Knowledge is the prime need of the hour. More and more, Negroes are taking full advantage of hard-won opportunities for learning, and the educational level of the Negro population is at its highest point in history. I leave you respect for the uses of power. We live in a world which respects power above all things. Power, intelligently directed, can lead to more freedom. I leave you faith. Faith is the first factor in a life devoted to service. Without faith, nothing is possible. With faith, nothing is impossible. Faith in God is the greatest power, but great too is faith in oneself. I leave you racial dignity. I want Negroes to maintain their human dignity at all costs. We, as Negroes, must recognize that we are the custodians as well as the heirs of a great civilization. We have given something to the world as a race, and for this we are proud and fully conscious of our place in the total picture of mankind's development. I leave you a desire to live harmoniously with your fellow men. The problem of color is worldwide. It is found in Africa, Asia, Europe, and South Africa. I appeal to American Negroes, North, South, East, and West, to recognize their common problems and unite to solve them. I pray that we will learn to live harmoniously with the white race. I leave you finally a responsibility to our young people. The world around us really belongs to youth, for youth will take over its future management. Our children must never lose their zeal for building a better world. They must not be discouraged from aspiring toward greatness, for they are to be the leaders of tomorrow. Faith, courage, brotherhood, dignity, ambition, responsibility, these are needed today as never before. If I have a legacy to leave my people, it is my philosophy of living and serving. As I face tomorrow, I am content, for I think I have spent my life well. I pray now that my philosophy may be helpful to those who share my vision of a world of peace, progress, brotherhood, and love.
Oh, freedom. Oh, freedom. Oh, freedom over me. And before I'll be a slave, I'll be buried in my grave and go home to my Lord and be free. Oh, freedom. Oh, freedom. Freedom. Oh, freedom. Oh, freedom over me. Over me. And before I be a slave, I'll be buried in my own grave and go home to my Lord and be free. No more weeping, don't you know? No more weeping. No more weeping over me. And before I be a slave, I'll be buried in my own grave and go home to my Lord and
And finally, today, our youth, children, and young adults will present to you their dreams and their desires for a better future. They have witnessed to this through the Black Lives Matter protests, which are a continuation of our civil rights movement beginning in 1960. They are declaring to the world that Black Lives Matter, that they realize, in the words of Amanda Gorman, that we still have hills to climb, but they are also assured that no matter what happens, they still rise. Maya Angelou said, "You may write me down in history with your dirty, twisted lies, but I still will rise." And so at this point, we encourage our children and youth and young adults, and we press forward with them for a new day and a new beginning.
Unconditional love by LaDaisha Ware. It is an unconditional love given from grandparents. It is the strength laid by my ancestors. It is the passion for freedom displayed in their praise.
It is the truth. Their freedom walks displayed. All these things have triggered in me the strength and determination to pursue my dreams. I dream a world by Langston Hughes. I dream a world where men, no other man will scorn, and love will bless the earth, and peace is past the dawn.
I dream a world where all will know sweet freedom's way, where greed no longer saps the soul, nor avarice blights our day.
A world I dream where black and white, whatever race you be, will share the bounties of the earth, and every man is free.
Where wretchedness won't hang its head and joy like a pearl attends the needs of all mankind. Of such I dream my world.
There were not only inequities in education, but in work opportunities. In spite of the fact that we had many educated and trained people, inequities remained. Low wages, unequal health care provision, housing discrimination, lending discrimination, limited our abilities to establish generational wealth because of lack of access to home and land ownership. So what happens to dream deferred? Does it explode?
Dreams by Langston Hughes. Hold fast your dreams, for when dreams die, life is a broken winged bird that cannot fly. Hold fast your dreams, for when dreams go, life is a barren field frozen with snow.
Too often has our dream of America been deferred, and yes, a dream deferred can explode. It exploded in the 1960s at the beginning of the Civil Rights Movement, and it continues to explode today with Black Lives Matter.
Let the change begin by LaDaisha Ware. Let the change begin, no longer in a place to allow MAGA to win. Too many times our cry has been greeted with billy clubs and fire hoses, knees in our necks, concrete pressed against our noses, all for the right to live, all for the right to be, all for the right to let freedom ring. All while Capitol gates were breached by Hussein himself, the cameras capturing the madness just to cash in all the wealth. Racist symbols and hate flags displayed so freely, while we sit, watch, and wonder, where's the National Guard, our army? I now see the fear they wish they never revealed, the fear of the strength that my bloodline instilled. As they ran the Underground Railroad to the promised land, as they shouted to the good Lord for protection and to give us a helping hand. As our perseverance clears a path for a new way to be, we found new momentum to raise our fists, to press back, to inspire, to dream.
Let America Be America Again by Langston Hughes. I stand for Breonna Taylor. She was fatally shot in her own apartment at age 26. Let America be the America it claims to be in its Declaration of Independence. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are endowed by their Creator with certain and inalienable rights. Among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Let it be the dream I used to be. Let it be the pioneer on the planet, seeking a home where he himself was free. America was never America to me.
I stand for Tamir Rice, age 12, fatally shot playing with a toy replica in the park. Let America be the dream this dreamers dream. Let it be that great big strong land of love, where never kings connive nor try and scheme, that any man be crushed by one above. It never was America to me.
I stand for Stephon Clark, a 22-year-old man shot in Sacramento, California by 2 police officers in his grandmother's backyard with his phone in his hand. Oh, let my land be a land where liberty is crowned with no false patriotic wreath, but opportunity is real and life is free. Equality is in the air we breathe. There's never been equality for me, nor freedom in this homeland of the free.
I stand for Freddie Gray. Mr. Freddie got arrested for having a knife. He was put inside a Baltimore police van. 45 minutes later, found unconscious and later died at the hospital. Who are you that bumbles in the dark? And who are you that draws the rails across the stars?
I stand for Philando Castile, who was fatally shot in St. Paul, Minnesota during a traffic stop with his girlfriend and 4-year-old daughter in the car. I am the poor white fooled and pushed apart. I am the Negro bearing slavery scars. I am the red man driven from the land. I am the immigrant clutching the hope I seek and finding only the same old plan of dog eat dog of mighty crushed weak.
Hands up, don't shoot. I stand for Michael Brown, who was fatally shot by a Ferguson officer. He was shot 6 times even though his hands was up. I'm a young man full of strength and hope, tangled in the ancients in this chain of profit, power, and gain. Of grab the land, of grab the gold, of grab the ways the saints find need. Of work the men, of take the pay, of owning everything for one's own greed.
Take your knees off our necks. I stand for George Floyd, who was killed by a Minneapolis, Minnesota police officer who held a knee on his neck for 9.5 minutes for allegedly using a counterfeit bill. I am the farmer, bondsman to the soil. I am the worker, sold to the machine. I am the Negro servant to you all. I am the people, humble, hungry, mean, hungry. Yet today, despite the dream, beating yet today, O pioneers, I am the man who never got ahead. The poorest worker bartered through the years.
I stand for Trayvon Martin, who was 17 years old and fatally shot in Sanford, Florida, while walking home from the store wearing a dark hoodie, holding a bag of Skittles and an Arizona iced tea. Yeah, I'm the one who dreamt our basic dream in the old world while still a serf of kings, who dreamt a dream so strong, so brave, so true, that even yet its mighty daring sings, and every brick and stone and every furrowed turn that made America the land it has become. Oh, I'm the man that sailed those early seas in search of what I meant to be my home. For I'm the one that left dark Ireland's shores, Poland's plain, and England's glassy lee. And torn from black Africa's strand I came to build a homeland for the free.
I stand for Alton Sterling, a man wrongfully shot by Baton Rouge police outside of a store while selling CDs for allegedly reaching for a handgun. Oh, let America be America again. The land that has never yet been and yet must be. The land where every man is free. The land that is mine, every poor man's, Indians, Negroes, me. Who made America? Whose sweat and blood? Whose faith in pain? Whose hand at the foundry? Whose plow in the rain? Must bring back our mighty dream again.
I stand for Sandra Bland, who was found hanged in a Texas police cell 3 days after being arrested during a traffic stop. The free? Who said the free? Not me, surely not me. The millions on relief today, the millions shot down when we strike, the millions who have nothing for our pay, for all the dreams we dreamed, and all the songs we sung, and all the hopes we've held, and all the flags we've hung, the millions who have nothing for our pay, except the dream that's almost dead today.
I can't breathe. I stand for Eric Gardner, who was placed in a chokehold by a New York City police officer. Sure, call me any ugly name you choose. The seal of freedom does not stain. From those who live like leeches on the people's lives. We must take our land back, America.
I stand for Walter Scott, who was fatally shot in Charleston, South Carolina by a police officer for having a non-functioning brake light. Oh yes, I say it plain, America never was America to me. And yet, I swear this oath, America will be.
I stand for the Charleston Nine, men and women who attend Bible study at A.M.E African Methodist Episcopal Church, fatally shot by white supremacists in Charleston, South Carolina. Out of the wreck and ruin of our lawless death, the ravishment of stealth and lies, we the people must redeem the bounty and beauty of God's earth and make America fulfill its claim to be the land of the free and home of the brave, so that it may truly be great. O America, remember, these are the words from the scriptures. We will not stop until justice roars down, like water and righteousness, like a mighty stream.
In the spirit of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., we stand as the new generation coming to cash the check. The architects of our republic wrote in the magnificent words of the Constitution and Declaration of Independence, a promissory note to which every American was to fall here. A promise that all men and women, black, brown, and white, would be guaranteed the unalienable right of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. While America was defaulted far too often on the promise for black and brown women and men, we still rise like the phoenixes from the ashes in pursuit of a better America for our families. We shall persist because all black families matter.
We must collectively, mothers and fathers, grandparents, aunts and uncles, restore the hope in our children and future generations that dreams do in fact come true. Oh yes, we shall rise like phoenixes from the ashes of dreams deferred into our destinies and a much brighter tomorrow.
Like Maya Angelou, you may write me down in history with your bitter twisted lies. You may trod me in the very dirt, but still like dust I'll rise. I'll rise from the dust to become a famous author like Ta-Nehisi Coates or Angie Thomas.
I'll rise like Stacey Abrams, who may have lost a gubernatorial race but never gave up her fight. She fought until victory was won, flipping the Republican state of Georgia to a Democratic one.
I'll rise like a bishop in the African Methodist Episcopal Zion Church to be like the Reverend Dr. Bonnie B. Hines, elected the first female bishop of the A.M.E Zion Church. Or I rise like the Reverend Dr. W. Darren Moore, who as the board chairman of the National Council of Churches was arrested for praying in the Capitol building during a peaceful protest in the fight for equality and justice for all.
I'll rise like Shonda Rhimes, Ava DuVernay, and Tyler Perry, who broke the black barriers in screenwriting, producing, and directing, and take my place in an industry dominated by whites.
I'll rise like Elijah Cummings and John Lewis and get into good trouble. They led lives of public service, fighting against inequality, and paving the way for a younger generation of good troublemakers, like Keenan Geeter and Brandon Scott, the youngest mayor ever elected to the city of Baltimore.
I'll rise above my circumstances and give back to my community like LeBron James, who not only excelled on the court, but built a school in his hometown, the I Promise School, or Misty Copeland, the first African-American principal ballerina who started Mind Leaps Foundation to support at-risk youth.
I rise like Kimberly Bryant, who developed Black Girls Code, which introduces African-American young ladies to coding with the hopes of building a new generation of coders. Or like Andre Young, Dr. J, the first billionaire of hip-hop, a music producer, rapper, and entrepreneur who developed the Beats headphones loved by so many.
We're going to do that one more time. Ready? You can start.
I rise like Kimberly Bryant, who developed Black Girls Code, which introduces African American young ladies to coding with the hopes of building a new generation of coders. Or like Andre Young, Dr. J, the first billionaire of hip-hop, a rapper, music producer, and entrepreneur who developed the Beats headphones loved by so many.
I rise like Morgan State University professors Dr. Larry Johnson and Dr. Dolan Hubbard, expanding the minds of future generations like Professor Cornel West, famous American philosopher, political activist who taught us you can't lead the people if you don't love the people. And don't forget that justice is what love looks like in public.
Okay.
I rise like Chadwick Boseman, an HBCU graduate who pursued his passion for acting and rose to become more than an actor. He was a trailblazer, an activist, and a hero in the Black community. He was our Black Panther, Wakanda forever.
I'll rise like Dr. Cynthia Winston Proctor, professor of psychology at Howard University, who was a principal investigator of the Identity and Success Research Lab and the founder of Winston Synergy LLC.
I rise like Kamala Harris, the first woman, first Black person also of Asian descent, the first HBCU graduate and first member of Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority to be elected as the Vice President of the United States of America, who dreamed as a little girl that such a moment as this was possible in America, who declared, while I may be the first woman in this office, I won't be the last.
I rise like a young Black boy who was raised for much of his childhood by his grandparents, became an alumnus of an Ivy League school, met one of the most beautiful Black women who also had a desire to impact the world, and worked towards justice for who rose from the center of Illinois, the first African-American president of the United States of America. Yes, I'll rise like the President Barack Hussein Obama, who also had the audacity to hope and gives me a reason to dream of a bright future.
Hi, I'm Keenan Jeter, a product of Baltimore City. Overcoming adversity is what we all can do, no matter our zip code. As I think about my own ability to achieve and succeed, I think about the community and generation that came before me and how they laid the foundation and paved the way for me to overcome some of those adversities. People like John Lewis and Barack Obama inspire me to take voting seriously and get involved in politics. I'm forever grateful to the countless people who poured wisdom into my life. And for that, I'm always reminded that there's a community and generation that's coming behind me and how it's my responsibility to reach out and bring them up. As African Americans, overcoming, achieving, and succeeding, it's in our DNA. But let's not forget that anything that's worth having won't come easy. It takes hard work, dedication, and determination. And yes, mistakes will occur, but it's what we learn from those mistakes that matters most. As a Black male who grew up in Park Heights, the odds were against me. As a Black male who grew up in a single-family home, the odds were against me. But I beat those odds because I never let my circumstances cloud my character, and I never let my difficulties get in the way of my destiny. For when I rise, you rise. When you rise, we all rise.
You're broken down and tired of living life on the merry-go-round, and you can't find a fighter, but I see it in you, so we gon' walk it out. Move mountains, we gon' walk it out and move mountains. And I'll rise like the day. I'll rise up, I'll rise unafraid. The silence is quiet, and it feels like it's getting hard to breathe. And I know you feel like dying, but I promise we'll take the world to its feet. Move mountains, bring it to its feet. Move mountains, and I'll rise up, I'll rise like the day. I'll rise up, I'll rise unafraid. I'll rise up, and I do it 1,000 times again. And for that we have each other, and we will rise, we will rise, we will rise, we'll rise. I'll rise up, rise like the day. I'll rise up in spite of the ache. I will rise 1,000 times again, and we'll rise up. I like the waves. We'll rise up in spite of the ache. We'll rise up, and we'll do it 1,000 times again.
and singing the words of the old Negro spiritual. Free at last, free at last. Thank God Almighty, we are free at last.